So this film seems like the perfect film to take a second and make some corrections from mistakes I've made in previous reviews. For instance, way back at the very beginning when reviewing Buck Privates, I'd said that the song Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy of Company B had won Best Original Song that year at the Oscars, and that is in fact not true. So I apologize for that oversight. And I've been meaning to bring it up in a couple of these reviews, but keep forgetting. But I feel like, again, this film offers me the perfect chance to make that correction. Another correction that needs to be made is I had said that Abbott and Costello had done 4 films for MGM, and that is not true. They only did the 3. So where my confusion came from is that when Abbott and Costello's contract at Universal was restructured and they were re-signed, because of course Universal was going to re-sign them, despite the fact that, you know, their popularity had been dipping a little bit, they were still reliable box office. So of course they're going to re-sign them. The profit from their movies allowed them to go make their bigger films. So yeah, of course they're going to keep it up. But when they gave them their new contract, they allowed them the opportunity to go make one outside picture a year. Not necessarily with MGM, kind of the same contract they had between Universal and MGM, but this meant they could go and do stuff for other studios. And this picture, The Noose Hangs High, was actually made for an outfit called Lion Eagle Films, which was a British-American film company run by the former head of Warner Brothers B-Picture division, which shows. We're going to talk about that in a second. This makes sense on a couple of levels. Number one, Bud and Lou had always been big in Europe, but obviously with the war going on, getting stuff overseas was a tall task and an impossible one in many instances. But now, after the release of The Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap, or rather in conjunction with it, a lot of their films, a lot of their early works were starting to be sent overseas and were finding a new audience. So their old movies were still making money. So working for a British-American-owned film company seemed like a smart step. The reason I had the confusion is that obviously, as you can tell by the fact that no one has heard of Lion Eagle Films, the company would eventually go under. And MGM bought, I would assume, if not all of their film stock, most of it, and the DVD I have for this was released through MGM. So hence why I was under the incorrect conclusion that they had 4 MGM films when in fact they only had 3. So there's my retractions, and now let's talk about the movie itself. So this movie made 1948, I believe, for Lion Eagle Films, and would go on to be one of the 5 of their films that was incredibly profitable their first year. So showing that Abbott and Costello still had drawing power. For all the work that had been going into the boys' films since the return from the lost year, and all the stuff I've been talking about over the last several reviews about the formula being switched up and trying to make Abbott and Costello's act appealing again after so long and so many movies, and all these different things that they had done, The Noose Hangs High feels a little bit like a regression. This one is much more back to the original formula, and I don't believe that is a bad thing. I find The Noose Hangs High is kind of like Abbott and Costello comfort food. It's not one of their best pictures. It's not one of their most ambitious pictures. And it does kind of revert back to the original formula of routine, 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 with a brief story kind of linking it all together. But the routines are still really fun. The story linking it together is engaging and interesting, and they make the smart move of, once again, keeping Abbott and Costello at the foreground of their own movie and not making them play second fiddle to some secondary story arc. The film, because it's being shot for a smaller company, and obviously this is a company that specialized in B pictures, feels like a paring back from some of their past works. Clearly, the budget is not as big. The sets are, you can tell, multi-purpose and multi-use. You know, the film looks, I'm just going to say, the film looks cheap. But again, that's not a bad thing. It's a much smaller, much more contained, old-school vaudeville comedy team film. This one you would not be out of line if you mistook it for one of their earlier films, because it seems to have that feeling to it. Okay, so that's enough qualifying. You know, what's this movie about? Well, long story short, how they actually get into the situation is a little convoluted, but long story short, Bud and Lou accidentally lose a big wad of cash that a gangster owes to a career gambler. And they're given 48 hours to get the money back, or else... It turns out they accidentally mailed the money to a young woman played by Kathy Downs, who was a maid for this kind of battle-axe old woman. Of course, gets this money in the mail, immediately quits, and she's out spending the money. So she spent all this money that they owe. So they team up with her, because now she's in this, her life is on the line. And they're together trying to get the money back, or trying to win it back, or trying to find some way to get away from the gangsters. And again, it's a very stock Abbott and Costello plot. You know, gangsters, gamblers, a lovely lady for them to work off of. The film, again, simplistic, but highly enjoyable. I think for all the talk of how much Bud and Lou wanted to do more with their films, I think there is a definite comfort they feel being back to doing some of their classic routines. And there are more routines in this film than there have been in like the last 3 or 4. They do a lot of them. They do the... But my mind is not blank, sorry. They do the get dressed, get undressed, which is a takeoff of the pack the grip, unpack the grip. They do a lot of their horse racing jokes. The highlight of this movie for me, whenever people ask you, what's your favorite Abbott and Costello routine? Obviously, who's on first is always going to be everyone's list. I've mentioned the lemon table, which is very dear to my heart. I love the bit with the candles where they're moving and Lou's trying to call Bud, you know, oh Abbott, or hey Charlie, or whatever he's playing at the time. So I love that. But one of my favorites is one of their lesser known ones, and it's called Mustard, where this is just a conversation between the two of them, of Bud asking Lou insane questions and then doubling back on them, basically seemingly for no other purpose than to get Lou riled up. You know, it starts with the thing of, you suppose you go over there and drill a hole in the wall. Okay, I go drill a hole in the wall. Why? Why'd you go drill a hole in the wall? Well, you told me to go drill a hole, and it goes on like that. And of course, the whole thing of, Lou not liking mustard, and Abbott giving him this whole bit about, all these people work in mustard factories. Those factories employ thousands of men, and what do you want them to do? Shut all those factories down and throw all those people out of work, blah, 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 blah. I love that routine, and I love it because it's just conversational. It's not a question of Lou misunderstanding a word or anything like that. It is just two guys having a conversation. It reminds me very seriously of conversations I've had with my friends where you just kind of get off on a tangent and you just start, somebody says something and you just jump on it and just start, riding that one point, and the other person's just getting more and more frustrated. I've done to people, I've had it done to me. But I love that routine. And there's just this extended period towards the climax of this film where Abbott and Costello are at a restaurant. They're making this plan to go and get arrested. So they go to jail so the gangsters can't get them. So they say, we're going to go and we're going to eat all this food and not pay the bill, and they're going to send us to jail. So it's just this extended scene of them at this dinner eating and going off on all these conversational rants. This one, they bring in the, Lou marrying the little girl routine from Buck Privates. That doesn't sound, it's not as gross as I'm making it sound. And yeah, it's just this conversation between them. And I love that. And I love the way it's directed. Just very simply, just put the camera there and let Abbott and Costello go. Let them do their thing. And I don't know, there's something very pure about that. You almost feel with a routine like this and the way this one is shot, like you're almost seeing the real Abbott and Costello. Even though they're doing a routine with predetermined lines, you almost feel like their reactions, the way they're talking to each other, the casual setting of the dinner, it almost feels a little bit like you're really seeing them. I know that sounds kind of bizarre, but it's one of the things I really love about that routine, and I love about the way it's done in this movie. They don't do it to its entirety, unfortunately, because the entire thing is really funny. But the way they do it, it's just really well done, and I think that's something that goes through the entire movie. It's the boys back doing their routines, doing what comes so naturally to them, and just being allowed to do it. Without the use of, boy-girl stories they got to play around. They do the You're Not Here routine that they did in Rio Rita. So yeah, there's just a lot of these great routines and a lot of fun that they're having with them. They do the phone bit where Lou calls up the gangster and they're in the booths right next to each other, and they're just screaming back and forth. So yeah, it's kind of a greatest hits, and that's why I call this one Abbott and Costello comfort food. A lot of these routines, you've seen them do before in past movies. Or you've probably heard a lot of them on the radio show as well. But just letting it go. The plot is compelling enough. The timeline is compelling enough. That the ticking clock is interesting enough that it keeps you engaged in the story. But you're having a good time just kind of sitting back and watching a bunch of Abbott and Costello routines. Almost like a clip show. But nowhere near as annoying. They never have to do the, hey, I always remember the time when doodly doodly, that kind of thing. Rounding out the cast, again, is Kathy Downs, who plays the young woman who accidentally gets the money that they send. And she's a fine hand. She's not bad. I'm going to say there's not a lot that stands out about her and her character. She's not a great comic foil against Bud and Lou. She's not one of the more magnetic leading ladies they've had. She's fine. But she's rather forgettable in the role, I'm sorry to say. But still, she works off of them well. Bud and Lou play off her fairly well. It seems like they're all having a good time working together. So, while not on the top tier of Bud and Lou leading ladies, she's still fine and I think she adds a certain grounding to it. I think if they had cast one of the more glamorous stars they'd worked off of, I keep thinking of like Marilyn Maxwell or someone like that, I don't know if it would have played as well. One of the things this movie does very well, one of the reasons I like it, is it does have that quintessential feeling that the great Abbott and Costello films always do, of just ordinary people caught in an extraordinary situation and trying to con their way out of it, using their street smarts to find ways around the problem. And I think having her as kind of an every woman type of character, I think it adds to that overall feel that these are just people who are kind of thrown together by chance and are trying to figure out a way out of the situation, and through the situation they kind of establish a relationship, and I really find that fun. Of course, Kathy Downs would go on to have her greatest performance, in my opinion, as the female lead in the science fiction classic, The Amazing Colossal Man. I'm not even joking about that. That film's amazing. One of the best Mystery Science Theater episodes. And when I realized it was her, I was like, oh, yay! Glenn was 50 feet tall. That's actually not her line, but anyway. The film also has some fun little comic twists where, the hardcore gambler that the gangsters are so afraid of turns out to be this lovable, like, little grandpa guy named Julius Caesar McBride that Bud and Lou and Kathy Downs befriend. And, like, we, the audience, are in on it, that he's really this nice guy who's not going to get mad at them, but they're all, running petrified. It's a cute little twist. There's not a whole lot to get into with this one, as there are with past films. There's not a lot to really analyze. it is exactly what I've said. It's Abbott and Costello comfort food. It's a greatest hits album. It's back to formula. It's a fun little film. It's relaxing. It's enjoyable. It's got a good energy to it. And overall, it's very satisfying. I think it's one of the... There's no stupid chase scenes through it. There's no musical numbers. It's just them, routines, basic story, fun characters. Not going to blow anyone's lid off. It's not a revolutionary turn for them, but it's still plenty pleasurable. I still really enjoy The Noose Hangs High. So yeah, there we are. So... this is going to be the last episode of Drive Home Reviews meets Abbott and Costello for a little while. We're going to go on hiatus for a bit. The summer's coming up. I'm going to be doing some traveling, which is great because, you know, we get to travel again. And I feel like there needs to be a break in order to properly build up what is about to happen. Because what is coming up next is a complete game changer. It is the start of the next and final stage of their careers, of their film careers. It is one of the most important films ever made, and I truly believe that. We've gone on a great journey here through these two halves of Abbott and Costello's on-screen film career. This film came out in 1948, their first one done in 1941. That's 8 years, and in that time, they have starred in 21 movies, 22 overall if you count One Night in the Tropics. That is a hell of an output, on top of their radio show, on top of the work they did for Uncle Sam. They have been the primary source of entertainment for America in the pre-war, the war years, which I can only imagine how hard that was to get people to laugh during the war, and then now into the post-war. They have been the biggest box office stars in America. They have had staggering success and have suffered personal tragedies, the likes of which most people will thankfully never have to feel. Their film career has been expansive, and they have done it all. They have hit the ice, kept them flying, been in the Navy, and have been buck privates who have gone to war and then come home. They've been lost in the bowels of society, they've been lost at sea, and they've been lost in a harem. They have wreaked havoc on Hollywood backlots, on college campuses, and on riverboats. They have fought ghosts, gamblers, murderers, gangsters, and Nazis. However, when Drive Home Reviews meets Abbott and Costello returns, Abbott and Costello are going to embark on a film which is going to define their film career. It is going to be something they have always wished for. They are finally going to have big-name co-stars. And they're going to have the on-screen pairing, which is going to permanently cement their legacy as one of the greatest and most influential comedy teams of all times. I think this film gets forgotten for how influential it actually is. And when we return, we are going to spend a great deal of time discussing the influence of this film on years to come. Yes, friends, it is finally that time. It is finally time. When Drive Home Reviews meets Abbott and Costello returns, it is finally time for Abbott and Costello to meet Frankenstein. And I am very much looking forward to exploring that movie with you all. So thank you all. We will return. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for enjoying. And as always, drive safe. And I will see you at the movies.